Welcome to Fertilish, the podcast where we get real about fertility, infertility, and everything in between. I'm Laura.
And I'm Brandis. And whether you're knee-deep in treatments, just starting to ask questions, or somewhere in the ish of it all, you're in the right place.
Here we ditch the stigma, break down the science, and have candid conversations about the messy, emotional, and sometimes hilarious journey to growing a family and preserving your fertility.
So grab your coffee, your meds, or just your curiosity, and let's get into it.
Hi, Brandis.
Hi.
Welcome back to another episode of Fertilish Podcast. Today we are talking about secondary infertility, what it is, and how it affects people, and how to cope with it.
Yeah, and I feel like secondary fertility, isn't something that's talked about a bunch, but secondary infertility is when you've had a pregnancy and a live birth in the past, and then now you're trying to have another child, and for whatever reason, you're unable to conceive again.
Yeah, I think there's so many misconceptions around secondary infertility, so happy to kind of do a deep dive into what it is and who could experience it, and just how to navigate that.
Yeah, and we're kind of talking about this, but it could be because, for whatever reason, your tubes end up being blocked later on, or sperm can change every 3 months. So, now there's no sperm. Or let's see, what else? You could have a new partner and, maybe something's wrong there. Maybe it's unexplained. Maybe we don't know why. Maybe now there's diminished ovarian reserve.
Right.
And so there are a lot, of different reasons people can experience this.
Yeah, absolutely. And, people can experience it after, not even, trying to get pregnant previously, a very short term, prior to trying for a second child. So I think that there's a misconception out there that, that only people who, have had a large gap in between their first child and trying for their second one experience secondary infertility, but there are people who, may have a 1-year-old and now are experiencing secondary infertility that needed, no assistance with conceiving their first child. So there's a lot of nuances to it for sure.
Oh yeah, or if you have, your first child easily, and then, people get pregnant on birth control or different things, and then, when it comes time for their second or third, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to wait because it's really easy for me to get pregnant. And then you wait, and then you realize, oh, what is going on? I never had this issue before. And I know this is something that's near and dear to you because it's something that you experienced.
Yeah, I didn't even know the terms secondary infertility prior to experiencing it myself. I obviously knew what infertility was, but I didn't know that secondary infertility was a term. So I have, for those of you who don't know, I have a 17-year-old daughter. It's crazy to say. We are getting ready for her to begin her senior year. It's crazy. So I wasn't trying to have my daughter. I got pregnant with her shortly after my first marriage, never experienced obviously any complications with trying to conceive. Never really thought that I would even try to have a second child. And then, her dad and I ended up getting divorced. And then I was just single mom for many years, and then met my amazing husband, and he had really focused on his career, and he had never been married and didn't have any children. And so when we started dating, he was like, I'm looking for a wife and I want to have a child. And I was like, oh, no, I'm never getting married again, and I'm certainly not having any more kids. I don't know what you're talking about. Probably not the one for you. And he was like, oh, we'll see. And then now we're married. Funny how that worked out. But we started, we had pregnancy loss. And so we started down the road of trying to figure out what was going on. And we ended up doing some testing and kind of, did some medicated cycles, and then
This was with your normal OB?
so we did test some testing, with my OB, after our first pregnancy loss, and then we did like some letrozole cycles. Actually, she might have put me on Clomid at first, but I can't remember. That's been what seems like forever ago. But did some medicated cycles, and then once we got to the place where, they were like, we may want to do like a trigger injection. They were testing to make sure that I was ovulating, but just to give us like some more control over timed intercourse. So now we needed some little bit of additional monitoring. At that point, they were kind of like, hey, like, let's go ahead and refer you to a fertility clinic.
Yeah.
And so I found my fertility clinic in Dallas. They were amazing. And then we started down the road of like doing some additional testing, and then kind of got to the point where he was like, hey, like, we can do the Ovidril and do some trigger injections for you. That's no problem. But I do think that you should probably try to consider IVF in the near future. But whatever pace you're, like you want to move at.
So it was somewhat unexplained at this point, right?
Mm-hmm,
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of when I started learning about like the term secondary infertility. And we did a semen analysis going into like our first IVF cycle. And so like at that point, nothing like still stood out.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until we actually got into our like IVF cycles, or our first IVF cycle, that like during monitoring, my reproductive endocrinologist kind of saw like some suspected cystic spaces on my uterus. And so we talked about like, was this adeno? We didn't know. And we did a Receptiva, and it came back negative. But, that's when I started really learning about like secondary infertility, because I had my daughter so easily and never experienced any like issues conceiving with her. I didn't expect to have, I knew that like obviously age impacts fertility. At that time when we were like starting to talk about having a child together, my major concern was just like any implications that could come to the child because of my age. So, I had kind of told him like, hey, like if we do have a child, I would like to do so before I'm 40, just for any like increased risk factors to the child.
Yeah.
Due to age. And that was all I knew about it. And that was kind of like that was as much thought as I put into it. And so I just like didn't, when it's happened, fine, the first time, and you don't think that you'll have any issues, after that. So, I have encountered a lot of people that have experienced secondary infertility, either from, ranging from like, people who are in their 20s and have had a successful, pregnancy and a live birth, seemingly very easily, and then go on, maybe a year later to try to trial for, baby number 2. And then now they're running into experiencing some things that they didn't, experience with baby number 1. And, sometimes that's caused by, issues that have arisen during that first pregnancy, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes the issues were there to begin with. They just didn't know that they were there because they did conceive to them easily.
Yeah. Or maybe the stars aligned and
Right.
everything, whatever you believe in worked in your favor. And yeah, you got pregnant easy. You were on the small side of statistics, but it still happened.
Exactly.
So yeah, it could have always been there. And, sperm can change every 3 months. So there's that too. So
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So like, we've kind of gone through that, with like multiple semen analyses over the course of time, like where we've had abnormal semen analysis, or we've had normal, or we've had, like still abnormal, but better than the
Yeah.
abnormals before. So like, yeah, I mean, so many factors go into that. And, you know, yeah, it could be so many, a number of many things. But I think that, like, you know, the emotional toll of it is pretty great, you know, as with any form of infertility.
Yeah.
But there are some nuances to it that are a little different, because I think that you, have a lot of guilt because, you know, you have this beautiful child, and you feel guilty because, you know, are you saying that this child's not enough? You
Yeah.
know, like, why do I want another child so bad? Why is this hurting me so bad when I have this beautiful, amazing child? And then there's the unsolicited comments all the time that, you know, people are like, well, you had one, like, just be grateful, or when are you going to give that child a sibling? Or, you know, like, oh, there's going to be too big of a gap. Like, why would you want to do that? Like, why would you want to start over? Like, you know, and you want to say, like, well, why does it matter to you?
Yeah.
Like, what business is it of yours?
Well, and we talked about this a little bit. It's hard because with secondary infertility, yeah, you get the comments of, like, you should be grateful for what you have. So you don't really fit into the, like, groups of people that have infertility that can't have a child per se. But then, you know, you have friends maybe that are having multiple children, and it's like, well, you don't really fit with them either because it's hard to watch them get pregnant and have babies. And then you're, like, stuck in this odd space.
Yeah.
And not only, you know, like you said, do you kind of feel down about it, but it's like, am I letting my partner down? You know, is my child that I have, like, upset because why do you want another one? So
oh my
there's
gosh,
just so many
absolutely.
things.
Yeah, that has been a big one for me, is like, you know, obviously, like, I can't, like, I definitely, like, I can't imagine, like, life without my husband and I having a child together, and, like, just, like, seeing, you know, like, something from me and something from him come to fruition in a human form. Like, that would, you know, just, like, be amazing. But, like, the guilt that I feel for my daughter, and, like, you know, all of the trips that we've had to take, all the times she's had to, you know, be drug along because we were going out of state for something fertility related, or, like, you know, our lives have revolved around fertility treatment or some nuance of it for so long. Like, you know, I do feel like that has taken away from her, and, like, all of the things that she has going on, and so, like, I feel so much guilt, and I don't want her to ever feel like that you weren't enough for me.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like, that is difficult. You know, it's hard to, like, circumvent, like, all of those, you know, guilt factors, that come into play, because you feel like, yeah, you're failing, like, everybody all at one time.
Yeah. Well, and it's hard to manage your own emotions when you're trying to feel for everyone else too. And then you mentioned letrozole and Clomid cycles. Did you say those were timed intercourse, IUI? You did both?
Timed intercourse, yeah.
Okay, so then you went straight from that to IVF. Okay.
Yep.
And you probably, you know, as you mentioned, you had Fallon, or your daughter, so easy that, like, I mean, imagine you never thought, like, you would have to do IVF. How was that experience, like, going through it?
Yeah, I think that, like, it just, like, happened so fast and furiously, like, you know, that it was, like, just going through the motions of, like, okay, like, we need to do this, like, this is going to cost how much, like, what?
Yeah.
You know? I think that in itself is, like, shocking enough that you're just like, oh shit, like, let me figure that out. Well, you know, where are we going to pull money from, and what account is this coming out of, or whatever. Like, you know, that was, like, before we ever knew about CNY, or, that was, you know, that was a big shock. So, like, I think that, like, you know, just, like, being in the moment of, like, let's, you know, try to figure this out. Like, I would like to try to have a baby, you know, feeling like this is, you know, there's a clock ticking, obviously. And yeah, I mean, I think that it was just like, okay, but I was so naive going into that, because I thought, well, this will give us a baby. And, you know, like, obviously there's disappointment at every stage, and you're like, well, this is not quite what I thought it was going to be. So I think that that's like very common for people who are going into IVF for their first time. I think that there's like, even if I don't care how many people tell you and how many times you've heard, like, obviously there's no guarantees with this. In the back of your head, there's like this hope that you're like, oh, but it's going to work for me, you know.
Yeah,
like,
you're the exception.
Right, yeah, absolutely. And then there's this like grand disappointment if it doesn't work. Like, obviously there are people that it does work for a first transfer. It's great. Like, I was watching this TikTok the other day, and it was like this girl asking, like, she had just had a consultation, and she was like, how many egg retrievals did you have? I've just had a consultation, and I'm not sure if I like need to go with the clinic that I had a consultation with, because the nurse told me, like, hey, a lot of times people need more than one cycle, so I just want to prepare you for that.
Yeah.
And I was reading the comments, and like, you know, people were like giving their own experiences, but there were people in there that were like, what? Like, I think you should change clinics. And I was like, oh no, like, I'm going to be the one. Like, should I say it? Should I not? But I wanted to, I didn't ended up commenting, but I wanted to say, like, hey, I think that's actually a really good thing that she said that. Like, it's not because they don't want you to succeed. Like, it doesn't do the clinic any good for them, for you not to be successful. But she's like preparing you for like what may come. And if your first cycle does work, then amazing, wonderful. Then like you can be relieved and be like, huh, don't need to do that again. You know, if you're, you know, if you have enough embryos to, you know, transfer for however many children you want to, you know, have, or whatever the case may be. But, you know, yeah, I think that like that's a common theme with people going through IVF for the first time. Like, you think that you're going to be the one that's successful the first time, and you're going to be one of those. Like, so I you know, obviously got past that.
Yeah. Well, and this goes back to myths we talked about. Like, people, I feel like IVF is this abstract thing where people think, well, it's IVF, so it's going to work.
Right. Absolutely.
And you get into it, even people that have had children in the past and they have tubal ligations, or their partner had a vasectomy and now they're coming for IVF, you know, they'll even verbalize to me, hey, I don't need the meds, I want to do natural IVF because I'm fertile and we don't have problems. And it's like, and I always tell people, IVF has nothing to do with natural fertility. It's a totally different ball game. And so, you know, a lot of people don't get that. And it is, you know, I've told multiple people too, hey, this may take, you know, multiple egg retrievals in order to get euploid embryos, or the amount of embryos for the amount of children you're wanting. And I feel like that does always take people off guard.
Yeah.
Or sometimes people even will get mad and say, well, why are you telling us that? And that's like, you know, even based on age or AMH, like, it's so important to manage those expectations, because I've had people that weren't told that, and, you know, they maybe got only one embryo that failed or was unsuccessful in a transfer. They got, you know, nothing grew, nothing fertilized, and then they end up on my schedule, and it's like, well, you guys messed up. We were told that this was going to be easy, or, you know, we want our money back, and it's like, oh no, this could be part of the process. Right. It's just, and so many people are not prepared for that.
I 100% agree. You know, I personally wasn't prepared for that. And like, I fault no one, but like, I mean, I might have even been told that. I don't know, but like, in my head, I thought it was going to work for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the first time it didn't work, I was like, what the hell? And then the second time I was like, oh, well, this has to work. And then it didn't. And then I was like,
yeah.
Excuse me?
Well, and I think one thing, you know, even working here that I was unprepared for was that because people do have those expectations, if something didn't work, it was like, oh, well, what did you mess up on my retrieval?
No, absolutely.
Or
it's someone's fault.
What did you mess up on my transfer? And it's like, oh, no, this doesn't always work. Even if it's a euploid embryo, it's not always going to result in a live birth. And that was shocking to me of like, oh my gosh, but again, I think it comes from this expectation that like everything's going to be perfect, everything's going to line up. You already have an embryo made. Why aren't I getting pregnant? It's something you did.
Yeah.
And it's all about, managing those expectations for sure.
Yeah, there's so many factors that have to align just for the embryo to implant. And we're not talking about making it from implantation to birth. Like there's literally a cajillion things that have to go right. And I know it's hard to like imagine because of how many people are on the planet, but like it is literally a miracle every time someone is born and born healthy. Like that is like, and if you think about all of those factors that have to like literally align for that to happen, and then there's so much pressure on now you have to have a smart kid, now you have to have a pretty kid, like for all of those things to come to fruition, like holy crap, like it's crazy.
It's crazy that people, so again, working here, like knowing, okay, there has to be on average 120 hours of progesterone plus or minus 3 hours for the embryo to implant. Not only does the embryo have to be euploid or chromosomally normal, but so many other interactions have to happen for pregnancy to continue to grow. Yeah. This can only happen on certain days of the month.
Yeah.
Sperm, it has to be over a certain amount. And I always joke with the nurses, I'm like, it's so like crazy to me that people get pregnant for free on their own. Like,
it's actually wild. Yeah.
Because there's so much that has to go right that we have
like accidentally.
Down to a science. Like, yeah, I'm like on birth control. I'm like, oh, like wild to me.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, when you break it down and you think about it like that, but when you're in the throes of it and you're just like, okay, like, holy crap, I've just paid this like huge sum of money for a deposit to even like get on a schedule,
Yeah.
like, and then the pharmacy called me and they told me how much it was going to be for my medications. And then that was like another huge sum of money. And then this box came in the mail and like, now you want me to do what with what? Like take these shots at what times, how many a day, like, and like nobody understands. And then like, now I feel crazy and, like all of these things. And then I did all that and that didn't work.
Yeah.
Like, what now? Like,
yeah, well, and we've talked about this before, where I feel like your whole life you're taught, don't have sex, you're going to get pregnant.
Yeah.
And, and then you have your friends with stories of, I was on birth control and I got pregnant, and you're like, geez, this is going to be so easy, like, I need to be careful. And then you try, and it's like, what the heck? Like, I thought this was going to be easy, because the way it was presented to me when I was growing up was that you think about sex, you're going to be pregnant.
Yeah.
And so now that it's hard the first time or hard the second time, it's so ingrained in your brain that it's going to be easy.
Well, yeah. And when you're in that place, like, it's really hard to think like, if at first you don't succeed, try again. You're like, oh, I can't even like comprehend trying again now. Like,
yeah.
And we definitely had to take some time, like breaks in between, like, are we even doing this again? Like, what's next? Like, well, first of all, let's not talk about it right now because I'm not even ready to like discuss it. So I need a break. Like, I need a drink.
Yeah.
That's the only stat that I need right now. Like, like I need a moment. And yeah, so I think like, and it's really, really hard to comprehend, when you think about like, hey, like I never like had these issues before, like what changed, and trying to figure out like, what am I doing something wrong that I wasn't doing before? I mean, I have literally like spent, I can't tell you how many hours, days, weeks, months, like breaking down like, well, what was my diet like whenever I had Fallon? That's my daughter's name. What was my diet like whenever I got pregnant with Fallon? Like, what was my activity level like? What was that like? Where was I working at that period of time? Like, how much was I moving? Like, did I have any like health issues going on? Like, what medications would I might have been on? Like, like, what can I replicate whatever that was? That was so many years ago. There's no possible way that I like would remember, but I've like tried to like recall so many different factors of my life, like to see if I could replicate that or find some answer,
Yeah.
to try to figure out like, well, what do I do now? Like what's the difference between now and then? So, and it's not anything that I'll ever like. There's not going to be an aha moment like Oprah says, and that it's going to be like, ding, this is exactly what you do. Take this ginger chew at 2 p.m. and
Well, and you know what's
whatever.
funny that you say that is like replicating things. I've seen that with transfers in people with really primary and secondary infertility. Like, I got pregnant my first transfer with these socks, and for these fries, we're doing this exact same. Obviously, that's not going to affect a transfer. But kind of like a funny story, I had a patient that she had secondary infertility, and we were talking about a transfer, and she said, same thing. I got pregnant super easy with my first one, and she goes on to tell me this story about how, I don't even remember, they were in a parking lot or something, and they were drunk, and they had sex in this car, and she got pregnant, and it was an accident. And she was like, I don't know if you guys allow this, but I was like wondering if I could have a couple drinks before coming in for transfer, because that's how I was the first time I got pregnant. And it's like, no, you probably should not do that. But people, they do try and replicate things, and it becomes this like mind game.
Oh, absolutely. Like, yeah, I mean, where you're like literally racking your brain on trying to figure out like, was the moon in whatever, I don't know, I'm not in astrology, but like was the moon in retro, whatever they say,
Yeah, I know. And it's so hard to like try and make everything perfect, and it's just not working, and we don't know why. And I think unexplained secondary infertility is even, I don't even want to say harder to agree to a degree, but it's like, I just don't get it. Like, how is it fine the first time, and now everything's still fine, and it's not happening? And I agree. I think it's something that, people don't realize. And I think as women, too, it's hard, because it's like, all right, it's hard enough to time when you're going to have the first child, because, you're growing a career, you want to live your life, you want to do all the things. And then it's like, okay, I had one, so now I'm going to advance my career a little bit before I try and have another. And then it's like, oh, should I not have done that? Is that the reason why? And I feel like it's hard because you don't hear men talk about it as much. I feel like it definitely affects women more, of like balancing a life and having kids.
Absolutely. I mean, we like have pushed for equality and being able to like, do the same jobs as men, try to get the same pay. Obviously, we're not there on any of those. But like we also are trying to like physically grow our families. Not that men are not a part of that, but they're not a part of that in the same way that we are. Obviously, they're not carrying a child. They're not giving birth. There is a different relationship with a child and a mother and a child and a father, and like for good reason. Like they, need both of those relationships. And both of those parents provide something very valuable to each, to the child. If you're in a relationship where there's a 2-parent household, not that single parents can't provide everything that a child needs, but there's just a different relationship with a child and a mother and a child and a father. And so, there's different expectations from that, obviously. And so, we're not where we need to be, in my opinion, as far as like recognizing like, hey, women can still very much be like career oriented and like want to get educations and be very valuable in the workplace, but still like be moms, still like have families, still be there for their child and be present at school plays and sports game, activities and those kinds of things. Like, why can't we do it all? And I agree, like we should be able to do all of those things. But for various reasons, there's times where we may have to, take a break from like continuing to grow our family. Like, okay, we had this child, like, maybe I'm not in a place with my career where I feel like I can, have another child right now. And so I do take a break, maybe that's a year, maybe that's a few years, or maybe that's 10 years.
Yeah.
But we should still have the ability to like have that other child when we're ready.
Yeah. Well, and kind of touched on it, but it is like hard because then when you have a baby, then you're on maternity leave, or I used to work orthopedic trauma, and when one of us would be, I could say one of us, when one of the first assists in the OR that would come help us on cases would get pregnant, they couldn't be in the OR anymore because there's x-ray in there. Same with, like, for HSGs, we use fluoroscopy, so if anyone that assists us gets pregnant, it's like, well, you can't do that anymore, or the cement in the OR was toxic, and it was like, okay, well, what are you going to do? And it's like, it's hard to balance that, and then when you take maternity leave, then, is my position going to get taken?
Yeah.
And so that is, it's hard to balance in our...
Or is it going to be weird when I come back?
Yeah.
Or like...
Well, the saying about, like, you should take care of your kids, like, you have, like, there's no career, you should work at your job, like, you have no kids. So it's so hard to balance, and I feel like we get the brunt of that.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So it's hard to time it and then worry about infertility, secondary infertility, and I think it's just a hard balance.
Well, I don't feel like that there's many employers that, like, when a man, discloses that he is expecting a child, that they're like, oh, how is this going to negatively affect, like, our company or coworkers or whatever. But I feel like that is definitely a thing when a lot of, not with every company, not with every group of coworkers, or, but a lot in the workplace. I feel like that happens, where they're like, oh, how is this going to negatively affect all the rest of us? Instead of being like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Yeah. Like, congratulations. Or maybe they say that. They don't mean it, though.
Yeah. Well, and I was just talking with, different coworkers I've had in the hospital, and actually my cousin came to stay with me this week, and she was talking about this, that one of her coworkers or something, was pregnant and was nervous about telling the company because she would be out. And she was like, so it's hard for people with kids. She was, but on the other hand, she was, I don't have kids. She's 39. And she's like, it's hard because it's always like, oh, well, you could stay late. You don't have kids. You have to pick up. And she's like, I feel like we get punished either way. Yeah. And that's hard. And obviously I don't experience it at this company. I feel like we do have such a good job here, but that's not the reality for everyone.
That's right. No, absolutely. Like, obviously I'm very vocal about, like, trying to grow our family at CNY. I'm, doing so right now, but, and obviously CNY is very, encourages that. Yeah. Like, the only question that I've gotten asked is like, when you do have a baby, like, you're not going to leave us, are you? And I was like, what? Like, absolutely not. I'll be at CNY until you either make me leave or until I retire. Like, but I have definitely had a very different experience, previously, where, I felt like I, like, couldn't disclose either a pregnancy or going through fertility treatment. And, like, it's definitely not that, my experience at CNY is not the norm for sure. Like, unfortunately, so many people, like, I'm a group of, like, these, like, Facebook groups that are, like, networking women, blah, 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 of XYZ area. And I, like, see that, like, anonymous question all the time about, like, I started a new job, pregnant, they don't know, like, at what interval should I disclose, like, what's the, like, happy medium of, like, not being, like, not being discriminated against, hopefully, like, because I'm, very new, but then want to make sure that I'm being, like, respectful of them and, like, be able to, to find someone to fill in for me when I do go on maternity leave. And, but, like, I don't want to lose my job, and, I need this job to be able to support this new baby. Like, so, I mean, I hate that, like, people have to go through that, but it is very much reality. Even with, like, newer legislation that was passed, in the past couple of years, it's still very much reality. So yeah, there could be so many different reasons why someone, like maybe has a gap, of varying, intervals. But regardless, when you are faced with like now you are experiencing infertility as secondary infertility, obviously I think that whatever the reason may be, it's very, very difficult to navigate, and it's really hard to like wrap your head around. And I think that it takes your mind a lot of places, because now you are trying to figure out like and get to the crux of like why you're experiencing this, so that you can circumvent that. So some of the common causes, and we talked about, touched on a few of these, are, obviously age, changes in health or hormone levels, scarring from like previous pregnancies or births.
Yeah, C-sections.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then male factor changes, which we touched on, or male factor, like I guess changes could include like new partner. So either male factor changes with the partner that you had the first child with, or a new partner, and then unexplained, secondary infertility, which just essentially means that like it's just difficult to pinpoint like what exactly is causing the secondary infertility.
And you were giving me a statistic earlier. What did you say? 1 in 7 couples will have this?
1 in 7 couples experience secondary infertility, which is staggering.
I know, and I think it's 1 in 6 for infertility.
Yep.
Which, again, is crazy. And I think I was telling my mom the other day, like, do you think it's our food now? Like, why is this becoming so much more common? And, she made a point about, like, I honestly think that people didn't talk about it a lot before. Yeah. Like, it was a very taboo thing that nobody talked about. And now it's becoming more of a conversation because of social media and different things, which I think, both are a little bit true. There is more awareness about it now. But, yeah, it's definitely not an uncommon thing. What, I guess, advice would you give to somebody that's maybe they've had a child before, they've tried for a couple months and it's not happening? What's something that you would advice you would give?
I think that I could imagine that just as a community, I feel like people that face secondary infertility because they did have that first child may tend to wait a little bit longer before exploring what's causing it, because you think, there's that conception there of hey, I had this child, so I don't have any fertility issues.
Yeah.
And so I think that the number one piece of advice would be to hey, just have those conversations about we're even starting to try. Before you even realize that there is an issue, have those conversations with your OB. We're starting to try, that way they can update some blood work for you at the bare minimum.
Yeah.
Obviously make sure that the prenatal that you're on is has the things that you specifically need. Because all prenatals are not the same, and all people don't need the same prenatal. So, or a combination of supplements with them. So, I think that that's just that would be my number one piece of advice, is to have that conversation when you guys before you ever start
establish
trying.
Care.
Exactly. And then also, if you do notice that hey, this is, I feel like this is taking a little bit longer than normal.
Yeah.
Don't hesitate to reach out, have a consultation with the reproductive endocrinologist. You don't have to be needing IVF to do so. And just they can evaluate your hormone levels, and at least give you some peace of mind of things look good. I do feel that maybe you should try XYZ, whether that's just timed intercourse with no medication. Or maybe they send you, just for a super quick blood draw at day 21 of your cycle, just to make sure that you are ovulating. Hey, we obviously know you were ovulating before when you had your first child, but let's just make sure you're ovulating now.
Yeah.
It's super easy to check your progesterone and just make sure okay, this cycle we did ovulate. We did have intercourse on these particular days. it does get cumbersome whenever, like you're trying to have a child and, you're like trying to make it romantic and fun, but then you like need to have sex these particular days. And then you're like, oh God, like I'm going to be out of town this day for work, or, it gets, hard, but try to, still keep some love alive.
Yeah. Remember why you're doing this.
Right.
And yeah, no, I get it. And we've definitely had that conversation about like, remembering why in the first place you're doing this.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that like also trying to like drown out some of the voices around you that are like, oh, well, you should just be thankful that you have your first child, or like, what do you have to be upset about? Or, well, you did it once, it shouldn't be hard.
Are you just stressed?
Yeah, go on vacation. Go have a drink. Like, lady, please stop playing. Please.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then understanding that like this time around may look different than the first time around. Mm-hmm. Understanding that evaluations that may be used this time around may look different than the first time around. Like, things are different this time. Uh-huh. You have at least aged somewhat. Yeah. And then, like, there may be other factors that have changed internally that you're not even aware of. Like, is your thyroid looking okay? Like, just so many different things. Like, so things may look a little bit different this time around. And that's okay. Like, maybe you didn't need an SHG for that prior pregnancy, but like now they just want to make sure that like your uterus looks good and like that, and rule anything out there, or maybe they want to make sure that your tubes are looking okay. So like those things may look a little bit, different this time around. And that's okay. Like, those tests are there for good reason. And yeah, I think that they're really good tools to be able to like either give you some additional information or exclude that there's even a problem.
Yeah. Well, and I'm really glad we got to touch on secondary infertility today, not only because it's something I see and treat all the time, but because, you have personally went through it. And I think it's really cool to get, a patient perspective on what that's like, what tests you have to do, emotions that go with it.
Yeah, and just like, in closing, with secondary infertility, obviously there's a lot of highs and lows with it. And so I think that like it's important to recognize that like grief and gratitude can coexist, and that you don't have to choose between the two. You can be very grateful and can't imagine your life with one child, but also grieving that you're having to go through the process differently the second time around, or that it's, now you need fertility treatment, or now you need, some additional help, or now you've kind of come to the conclusion that like after you've explored XYZ options, that growing your family is either, it looks different than you imagined it to. And so, I think that like it's important for us to remind ourselves that those two things can be true at the same time.
Yeah, and I love that you said the grief and gratitude thing. I think that's so true about, a lot of things, and I think sometimes it's just nice to hear that, hey, it's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
To feel that way.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's like not your fault.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we talked a lot about, different causes, emotions that go with it. If, secondary infertility is something you've experienced, or a friend or a story you'd like to kind of tell anonymously or not, you can always write in on our website, cnyfertility.com/fertilish. We also have an Instagram page, Fertilish Podcasts, that you can always write us on, and yeah, if you
they
have
come
any
straight
feedback.
to Brandis and I. So yeah, we appreciate all the messages that we get, and all the comments, and we both see every single one of them, and we really appreciate the feedback. Or if there's subjects that you would love for us to cover in the future, like, please don't hesitate to give us some suggestions.
All right. Yeah, let us know, and we will see you guys next week.
See you next week.